So here we are, as in previous videos, we're looking at the BCAIP instructional framework, and this time we're looking at practice number 3, facilitating collaborative inquiry through disciplinary language and practices. Okay, so again, this practice has a lot of complexity, a lot of layers to it. So I want to take us through a bit of a close reading and develop some metaphor over here to help us get into that complexity and make sure we're on the same page when we're observing and scoring for this practice. Okay, so to start us off, what is it? In this practice, the teacher creates opportunities for students to collaborate with each other in ways that generate new ideas and or solutions and or interpretations. Okay, so this is really the core of this practice. We're looking at the nature of inquiry. We want to see in order to see evidence of this practice, we're gonna need to see some kind of inquiry that the students are engaged in. And so, as we talked about in the last practice, moving away from that quiz show style of instruction and aiming towards something that's more like having students engage in a soccer game or a soccer scrimmage, where they are getting to, take the disciplinary knowledge and skills that they're learning and engage them in creative and authentic ways. So moving over here for a second, thinking about the nature of student inquiry. If we're not seeing any evidence of student inquiry, we can think about students sort of sitting on the sidelines and watching. And not to say that there's never any role for this. Obviously, everyone needs to sit on the sidelines sometimes, but we don't want to see students sitting on the sidelines for the entire class or, an entire unit, an entire class in its, entirety from, several months, start to finish. So there's one version. This would be no evidence. Thinking about moving beyond students on the sidelines, we might see something like students practicing collaborative skills, which is also another important thing. But they're more focused on, the teacher is focused on having students repeat certain skills, like reproduce things. They're not getting to be creative. They might be developing skills, and again, that's great and very important, but there's no creativity. They don't get to choose how they are, expressing these skills. And then finally, what we really want to see is something more like students engaged in like a disciplinary scrimmage where they're getting a chance to use these skills and knowledges that they've developed and use them creatively in an authentic context where we can think about the goal of being some sort of maybe disciplinary knowledge, some sort of objective of the inquiry, but they're not just replicating or recreating some procedure. They're really getting to use the knowledge and skills that they've learned creatively. Okay. So going back to the text, and this is just elaborating on this same idea. We focus on generating new ideas, solutions, or interpretations to once again position students as sense makers, right? They're sense makers by moving beyond the learning of facts, procedures, and skills. They're over here, maybe these two. And instead think critically and creatively through science and engineering practices, mathematical practices, or ELA practices. Woohoo, down here, we're in a scrimmage. Great. There is also a focus on sustained collaborative inquiry where students are co-constructing ideas, not just expected to work together. This can happen in a small or large group or even a whole class. So there's a conceptual objective that we're focusing on here too. So it's not just using the disciplinary practices involved in your subject. We're also using those practices and skills in the service of developing understanding around disciplinary ideas and knowledge. Okay. There's also a targeted focus on collaborative language practices that align with the following ELD standards. So I'm not going to read all these, but I'll unselect that. And if you want, you can pause the video and take a second to read through these. But we're looking at these two sets of practices about interacting in meaningful ways with a focus on collaboration and or on interpretation. So I'm going to come back up here to look at our layers. So now we're getting into the nature of tools that students use for inquiry. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down here to our next set of images. So we want to see students using these ELD practices as a particular kind of tool, strategy, skill set in their scrimmage. So just getting more into the details of like what we're expecting and hoping for students to do, what we're planning for students to do when they're out on the field. This is one of those sets of tools. So we can think about this set of tools as similar to like a soccer skill. So I chose like a chess stop drill. So students might do some kind of drill and then get to actually use it in a game, right? In an authentic situation. And in the case of a classroom, that authentic situation this is the playing field. This is the scrimmage field, right? Students are engaged in authentic inquiry. They're using these ELD practices, and they're also using disciplinary language and practices. Okay, coming back over here. In this practice, the teacher also provides strategic supports to better allow emergent and experienced bilingual students to collaborate with others for disciplinary sense-making. Supports can come through a combination of norms, structures, modeling, feedback, or resources in a way that helps students develop discipline-specific language so that they can collaborate with others. Okay, so I'm going to come back up to the next one, our next layer. So we have students engaging in authentic inquiry. We have students using a particular set of tools to engage and while they engage in authentic inquiry, those ELD skills and disciplinary knowledge and practices. And then we're looking to see how is the teacher helping students use these tools to engage in authentic inquiry. So this one's a little bit more straightforward, but we want to see the teacher using things like modeling, setting norms, student roles, and participation structures to scaffold this kind of really rich activity that we want, right? The teacher's doing a lot. Even though they might be kind of invisible during the scrimmage, they're, over on the sidelines, probably, communicating, seeing what students need. They have perspective. They're watching the whole thing, but they're not super visible necessarily during the scrimmage. And emergent and experienced bilinguals' communicative repertoires. are leveraged and possibly expanded to engage them in collaboration with others. Okay, so here's our constant BCAIP layer of biliteracy support with EBLs. Okay, so we have all of our students engaging in authentic inquiry. They're using a particular set of tools to engage in that authentic inquiry. We have the teacher using a particular set of tools to support students in their authentic inquiry. And then we have another subset of tools that teachers are using to engage their emergent and experienced bilinguals. So I wanted to build in our EBL students into this soccer metaphor by thinking about maybe the teacher has a set of students that have this unique set of skills, right? So I want to think about maybe a soccer coach having a set of students who they know to be ambidextrous. So that's maybe hitting the biliteracy ambidextrous metaphor a little bit on the head. And of course, biliteracy is a little bit misleading because we're not just dealing with students, working with students who have two sets of language skills, but all of our students have rich linguistic repertoires. And then we have certain, some students, or maybe all students, but we're going to have students who are developing language in 2, 3, 4 different languages. But just to be really simplistic about it, I want to think about some students are some of your players, the players in the classroom, are ambidextrous. We would want to see the teacher leveraging those skills and expanding those skills in particular ways. And recognizing the fact that the teacher has an incredible opportunity in these ambidextrous students because that is a really cool skill for a bunch of your players to have that's going to make your whole team a lot more powerful. So we want to see our coach/teachers recognizing that there are students with this potential, taking particular kinds of steps to engage with the students' ambidextrous talents, their multilingual skills, and develop those skills to become their most amazing player that they can be. Okay, so that's all the layers. There's a lot of layers in this one, but I actually think it's one of the most straightforward ones that we have in the framework. So now that we have done our close reading and built out our metaphors a little bit, let's go and look at the rubric.